And an educator, and I think that's
Yes.
the important thing is as a curator, you get a chance to do the research, but then a chance to go out and educate people.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so where does the story begin? Well, take us back to give us
Right.
an idea what people will learn from Freedom's Shadow.
Well, the exhibit begins with the founding of the city and the Residence Act and how the District of Columbia was created through secession of land from Southern Maryland and Northern Virginia to create this federal district. So we begin by explaining that briefly, and then we also talk about how the land was selected, why it was chosen, and the role of individuals like George Washington, Peter Charles L'Enfant, and Benjamin Banneker, and we begin telling their role in creating and surveying the land. And then we go into this Capitol, this building that we know would require massive amounts of labor. So we start talking about how labor was recruited.
And some of that labor was recruited in a way, when I was looking at the exhibit, that surprised me, and that is the idea that slaves, already enslaved, were rented, and
Right.
that their owners actually got the benefit of that. They're doing all the work, but
Right.
Yeah.
There was a system used for recruiting labor, and the system was called hiring out or slave hire. And this system for recruiting labor was well in place in this Chesapeake region as well as other places in the United States and in the West Indies. So the way the system worked was if you were a larger owner of enslaved people, if you had a surplus of enslaved labor on your plantation, then you could rent that labor out to your neighbors or somebody who was a smaller farmer, yeoman farmer, for a temporary time period, on a temporary basis. And the negotiation of pay, that the pay scale was left between the owner and the hirer. So then that money that the enslaved person, and usually these were skilled enslaved people, the money that they earned was then given to the owner. And the hirer paid the owner for the labor.
that is
So,
remarkable.
Well, it was well in place, and the commissioners at the time of the District of Columbia would have been familiar with it, as they also owned enslaved people. So they were familiar with this system, and it was a quick and easy way to recruit mass labor, mass human resource. So that was a system that was used at the Capitol as well as the President's house that was constructed at the same time as the Capitol.
And that wasn't easy labor if you were the one doing it.
Right. It's arduous labor and hazardous. There were incidents of fatality and accidents as well at the Capitol. So, and we talk about that in the exhibit. These were pre-OSHA days, so there was no, these were simple machines that were used. So, the men worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week.
In the hot Washington
whether
summer.
it's heat or whether it's in the middle of winter, there was this need for a constant pace of labor, because the Capitol had to be completed by 1800, at least well enough for Congress to move in. So there was a deadline to meet, and in doing so, as a consequence, there were some injuries accrued, I'm sure.
All right, on that we're going to take a quick
Great.
break, but the good news is we're not going to let you go, Felicia Bell, and we're going to bring back some of the history professors from Montgomery College who had a chance to work with you when the exhibit was brought to the college. We're going to continue our discussion.
Great.
We'll take a short break, and when we return, we will talk with some of the faculty members who indeed participated in the roundtable discussion more on the exhibit from Freedom's Shadow. When we come back, you're watching Campus Conversations.
I think it's beneficial when these schools celebrate Black History Month.
Black history is important for Americans just in a whole, because it's a big part of like our history.
It's just good to recognize our past and the strides that we've made in our communities to overcome the, racism, and just see how diverse everything is now.
And also to understand sort of like freedom for everyone. I think because their struggle for freedom also depicts like, I guess, struggle for freedom for women as well, and for minorities in general.
Montgomery College, for one, has so many different people from so many backgrounds that by looking at Black history, for example, would give those people an idea of Black history.
Well, it is a very, very good, big part of our history. There's so much history about the Black community, which I think the whole world should know, beginning with back in the days where slavery brought about. So it's a good thing to learn about. It's very beneficial for either future generations to learn about as well.
I think it really makes people appreciate the African American community.